So I want to call the finance subcommittee to order. And I believe we still have the one item on the agenda. It's the cost of services study and a preparation for discussion of the full board regarding the rate increase. So Vic or Chris, are we organizing?
This is Chris Wheeler with City Legal. I don't know if Vic had any preliminary comment made, but at some point I will be discussing the resolution that's been drafted that will have in it the recommendation to the board, to council, the form of ordinance that would put forth the proposed rates. And so Vic, I don't know if you have preliminary thoughts or anything you'd like to discuss before that, before we launch into that, but that's all I have to discuss with the board.
The only other thing that I have is that when Chris began working on the resolution, he noted that that there had apparently not been a detailed analysis of the fire fee for the IU, and Mark Beauchamp worked with Chris to revise that and come up with a rationale, and it actually revised it down somewhat. Mark, would you like to explain any details about how you did that?
Sure. There was no documentation on how the initial rate was calculated. So what I did is I talked to Bloomington staff to identify what fire protection infrastructure was behind the master meters. And IU has their own hydrants. So when we calculate the fire protection charges, it consists of two components. One is a portion of the system that's allocated to it, and the other one's a portion of the hydrants. So what I did in the calculation of the fire protection charges for IU is I removed the hydrant portion of the public fire protection charges. So that caused their rate to be lower than what they're currently being charged. So we don't want to double charge them for the hydrants when they own them themselves. I think it was down like a couple $100 a month. It wasn't a large amount of money, but it did go down a couple $100 a month.
There are a lot of hydrants, though. A lot of service connections, though, at IU. So, Chris, do you have anything to add regarding the resolution?
First of all, my apologies to the board. I originally directed a form of the resolution to the board as a whole, including all members of the subcommittee, which contained a copy of the form of ordinance. So you had received that, but then we needed to make yet another update to the resolution itself. Early this morning that was done, and I reissued the form of resolution, but failed to include a copy of the form of ordinance. So that's been done again. We're back to having it all back together. I just emailed all of that to you yet again. And Holly or Latrina, if you could put up the form of the resolution with the ordinance, please. You'll see the whole thing here now. And I just thought we'd scroll down through it briefly. I don't want to get into super detail here because we've already talked about what we've done to arrive at the figures that we have. But this form of resolution reads very similar to any of the other rate case resolutions that this board has considered and approved. It identifies in the first whereas clause who we are, and which utility we're dealing with, in this case, the waterworks utility, and why it exists, and that's through Indiana code. The second whereas identifies the fact that we have current waterwork rates and charges, and they are approved by the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission as of the 4th day of August 2017. The board then retained services, and we did quite a while back, to have Utility Financial Solution LLC conduct a cost of service study. And as you all recall, this was a long time coming, and arrived at the request repeatedly of council and the mayor's office first. And so here we are today, having done so through the services of the Utility Financial Solutions LLC. The next whereas then all identifies the fact that we've also employed the services of Crow LLP to prepare a study of the revenue requirements of the waterworks system. The next whereas then discusses the fact that upon consideration of the two reports, so we've got Crow and we have UFS, and that's what we've been doing these many past couple of weeks, is to discuss those two studies and the fact that what has been recommended is that we introduce an adjustment upwards in two phases that would show an 11.73% increase in revenues for phase one and a 9.38% in revenues for phase two. Then on the next page, we see the whereas discussing that these studies and recommendations are found that these rates and charges of the waterworks system of the city should be increased based upon what we've seen in those studies, and should be done in a phase one and phase two. And that we would like for phase one to take effect once the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission has had an opportunity to review and approve these adjustments. And then phase two would take effect January 1, 2024. And these phases would be done to produce sufficient revenues to meet the requirements of Indiana code for us to maintain this water utility. Then the next whereas discusses that the rates and charges are set forth are non-discriminatory. They're reasonable, they are just, and are based upon the cost of providing service to each class of customer. This gives due consideration to the concept of gradualism to minimize rate shock to its customers. We then propose a form of ordinance in the next whereas, and that can be found in Exhibit A. And the board now desires to recommend adoption of the proposed waterworks rate ordinance to the City of Bloomington Common Council. And then we get into the actual resolution itself through 1, 2, and 3, which are to recommend to the Common Council that the rates and charges for the users of the waterworks be modified as in and proposed in the waterworks rate ordinance. That's Exhibit A. The Secretary of the Board is directed to present a copy of this resolution along with the attached to the clerk of the city for presentation to the Common Council, and the resolution shall be in full force and effect upon adoption by the board. Scrolling all the way past the signature blocks, you then see the actual ordinance, which note the whereases are all very similar with a little bit of change, but not much that's significant. Then you get in the next page, the actual change in the language of our ordinance. And that's where you can see where the actual rates are being put forth in phases 1 and phase 2 for all rates utility. Numbers set only by myself, but by our counsel, David McGimpsey. They've also been reviewed again by our experts. And I trust that the numbers that you see there accurately reflect the numbers that have been recommended by the study. That's the form of the resolution with the ordinance, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions that you might have. If I cannot answer them, I'm going to lean heavily on our experts. Thank you.
Okay, Do we have any questions out there? I've lost my video, so I can't see you right now. I'll try to get it
There we go.
back.
I have a question, Jim. It's Amanda.
Okay, I can see
Actually,
it all now.
it's not really a question. It's just a comment. My OCD on these things is that there's several spaces in the ordinance where there's extra spaces in the dollar amounts. And I don't know if that was just a matter of printing and how it came across, but I just like things to look nice. Sorry.
I agree with you, Amanda. I like that too. I like columns to be straight. That's merely a formatting issue from changing the document from Word to PDF and then being shared by different computers.
Yeah.
And put on your screen to look at. I can assure you that when it goes to print as a final ordinance that goes into our code, those columns line up. The editors who do that work make sure that it all looks nice and neat and pretty and tidy.
Thank you. But otherwise, I don't have any questions about it. I think it's fantastic, everything that's been put together. So I don't have anything.
Okay. Any other questions out there?
Yes, Jim, I don't know if you're taking questions from the public yet or not, or.
Let's see if the board has questions first, and then we'll go beyond. Anyone else from the board?
I don't have any questions. I appreciate all the time and information that you've shared with us over the last several weeks and feel like it's very, very thorough. So thank you.
Thanks. Vic or Chris, I'm just wondering whether this kind of increase, we've agreed now to do it, every 3 to 4 year cycle. Is this the kind of increase that we can expect every cycle? Or once we get the major jobs done, can the ratepayers expect it to flatten out?
I'll take that one. I would expect them to flatten out. The main escalator in this one is the expansion of the water main replacement program. Going forward in the future, assuming that at the end of this rate cycle, we have achieved our goal of getting to the point where we're on a 100-year replacement cycle for water mains, I don't see us increasing that number in real terms again. I think that would grow with inflation like the rest of the budget. What I do anticipate, though, is that 2029 or thereabouts, we're going to have a lot of debt roll off of the from the water utility. So at that point, we can anticipate some changes. I would not think that we are going to need any major capacity improvements in the system as a whole before that. So I would tend to think things would level out. Laura or Chris, do you have anything to, or is there something I'm missing, Jennifer or Craig?
No, Vic, I think you hit on the two items that I would have contributed to.
Yeah, thank you, Vic. I think it's important that the public understand that these rate increases are for very specific needs and very important specific needs, and that we don't expect that this kind of increase will go on and on and on, because we've reached the point here where we need to fix things that need fixing. So I wanted to make sure that that message gets across. So thanks. Keith, did you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to make a couple of comments about this particular case, Mr. Sherman. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this Zoom call. Again, my name is Keith Thompson. I'm with Indiana University. I serve as the Assistant Vice President for Facility Operations. So I'm responsible for all the utilities on the Bloomington campus. I have recently participated in a couple of earlier Zoom calls with Vic Kelson and his team about this case and trying to get more information so we can get our hands around these increases. But the first thing I really want to convey to this finance committee is Indiana University is not happy with a two-phase 40% rate increase to our campus. I mean, that is significant. I believe your resolution talks about rate shock to customers. A 40% increase is a rate shock, and I'm coming to understand that there may be more of these increases coming back to the university in the next coming years. So having said that, you know, we feel that maybe the capital improvement portion of this should be slowed down a bit, if you will, until like Vic mentioned, you've got a bunch of debt rolling off in 2028, and half of your capital needs will disappear at the end of 2028. But for us to take this kind of hit on and maybe more 40% increases in multiple phases coming down the pike, we're not happy with this. So we're looking for ways to share our infrastructure with the city. I've expressed to Vic earlier that, you know, we have significant infrastructure on the Bloomington campus. We have over $14 million of water infrastructure on this campus. As you mentioned today, we have multiple fire hydrants. We have piping all over the city of Bloomington to serve the buildings on this campus. So I just wanted this committee to realize that we want to find ways to tampen this increase to our students and our faculty. And, you know, we likely will intervene in the rate case at the IORC and yeah, you know, work our way through that process if we get to that point. But we're generally not happy with this size of a rate increase. We feel that we're paying a big share of this capital improvements for the city of Bloomington the way it's been allocated to our campus. So I just wanted to make sure, Mr. Sherman, you heard that from me, and you understand our position of this general approach and the speed is in which you're going to make improvements in Bloomington to the water infrastructure.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. I guess I would say that I certainly understand that, especially in times like this when the university is facing a lot of adversity for reasons of COVID and decreasing enrollment, et cetera, et cetera. From the other standpoint, from the standpoint of the Utilities Service Board and from CBU, the projects that are necessary need to be funded. So they need to be funded from someone. It may be from residents, it may be from commercial, it may be from industrial, it may be from the university. And I think what we've tried to do is follow the cost of service numbers to try to make it as equitable as possible without going overboard for any particular user. And I understand you feel that maybe we've gone overboard for the university, and you know, we have discussed the allocation of the different rates, and you know, I think what we've come up with is a fair allocation over time. So I can understand the university's point of view. As a longtime employee of the university, I certainly don't want to see anything done that hurts the university in terms of its budget.
Yeah, we just appreciate, sir, the ability to express our opinion here. And
sure,
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions out there?
Keith?
Yeah, Amanda?
I actually have a question of Keith, if it's appropriate for me to just address him. Are you also planning to make these comments at the public meeting, or are you simply doing this here in the subcommittee?
I'm not sure, ma'am, how many of these meetings your organization has. This is the third one I've participated on and expressed my concerns, but I can stay for the 5 o'clock too and express them again.
But I just wanted to see, because I'm actually running the next meeting, and one of the things I did want to talk to the subcommittee about is how we're going to handle this through the meeting. And I just want to make sure that if you are going to be on there, I want to make sure that your voice is heard, because it's difficult to see how many people are on a Zoom. I don't know what we're going to, what we're going to anticipate here. So.
Vic?
I just wanted to comment and try to put Mr. Thompson, maybe bring you a little bit of ease on this. This rate case is a 22% across the board revenue change. It's not a 40% increase. It's a 22% increase. The reason that at the same time as we do that 22% revenue increase, we're doing the reallocation to account for cost of service, because residential customers presently subsidize all the other customer classes. So the way to think of this is as a 22% revenue increase and a reallocation among the classes. So for example, back of the envelope calculation is that if you look at our wholesale customers, the residents of the city of Bloomington subsidize the water supply for our wholesale customers by about $250,000 a year. So eliminating these inequities in the pricing structure is one of our goals, and it's one of the things that we're expected to do, to make sure that every customer class is paying the cost of their service. So it really isn't a 40% increase. And I wouldn't anticipate, as we said moments ago, we don't anticipate this kind of an increase again at this level in coming years. We anticipate that the water rate will flatten out with time. And right now we've already funded all the huge projects that we're doing on the wastewater side. So our anticipation is that these kinds of rate shocks are going to diminish in coming years. So that's just, I just wanted to try and refine that a little bit. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions out there? Holly, do we have any public listeners listening in with questions or comments?
There are no questions or comments via Facebook.
Okay, then, yeah, Amanda, please.
Jim, I just wanted to, just review with the committee how we're going to address this at the meeting this afternoon. And want to make sure, number one, that everybody's in agreement with how we'll handle it, and Chris, to make sure that we're doing everything appropriately. So what we're going to do is I will ask staff to do their presentation, and we will ask that everyone hold their questions or comments until the end. We want to let them get through the presentation. And then we will have Jim, as the chair of the subcommittee, give his report, again asking for folks not to have questions until we get through that. Then we'll take questions from the board, and then we'll open it up for public comment at that point. And I don't know, is the chat function available on the Zoom for the public?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we'll just monitor that, and we'll let people know that if they do have comment, they can either put their name in the chat or on the Facebook page, and we will call on them individually, especially since we might not be able to see everyone. So that'll be we'll just do that. Does that sound? Oh, and then Chris, I did have a question. If there is public comment, are they limited to 2 minutes or 5 minutes, or how long? Or does the board have to vote on it?
It's generally a question of how many. No, it's up to the the chair to identify what the time limit will be based upon the number of folks who might be present. If there are many folks present to give comment, it can be a 5-minute per. If there are a lot of people, you might want to consider a 3-minute public comment session. And I don't know, I assume folks will be attending the Zoom meeting and can actually be unmuted by our co-hosts to allow them to just simply discuss their opinions directly to the board.
There will also potentially be comments on Facebook Live, so we might want to go through all the Zoom comments first and then ask Holly for the Facebook Live ones.
That sounds good.
Hey,
So
Chris,
does everyone agree with that? Does that sound like a good procedure?
It's very appropriate to take public comment in a situation such as this, have that public comment taken at the time that the agenda item discussed by the board. You don't have to wait until the end of the meeting.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Chris, does the subcommittee now have to make a recommendation on this or not?
There doesn't need to be a formal vote in a subcommittee meeting.
Okay.
You certainly can do that, but you simply need to agree that you're going to make this recommendation in the form of the resolution to the board.
Okay, that's fine. All right, seeing no other comments or questions, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn until our regular meeting in a half hour.
So moved.
Okay, we're adjourned for a half hour.